Why unionize designers and cultural workers?
So I'm Margarita. I'm a member and organizer in UVW's branch Designers and Cultural Workers, and I work as a graphic designer and a lecturer.
I'm Francisca. I'm also a graphic designer, and I'm also a member and organizer in DCW.
And I'm Anna. I'm also a member and organizer, and I work as a freelance textile designer and front of house staff in an independent cinema.
Cultural work is work. We are here presenting the Designers and Cultural Workers branch of United Voices of the World. We will go through how the branch was formed and why, making a case for campaigning towards better pay and work conditions in creative and cultural fields by unionizing designers and cultural workers. We want to stress how art workers can make change through collective organizing and working in solidarity with other workers across different sectors to address inequality and exploitation.
So Designers and Cultural Workers started off the back of a couple of years of different activists and collectives feeding into a wider conversation about workplace organising in the cultural sector. A particular catalyst were events held by a self-organised design education collective that I'm also part of called Evening Class, who ran events for Anti-University Festival in 2016, 2017 and 2018, focusing around design education, design work and eventually design unionising. We set up a graphic design workers inquiry as a research group within Evening Class as a response to the problems we observed of widespread overwork and the culture of unhealthy working practices within the graphic design industry, as well as other creative industries in the UK, such as architecture, fashion, and so on. So at these events, we explored the history of the original Artists Union, which took many years to set up, and also at other histories of workplace organising affiliated with our sector, such as printers and typesetters, all of which the union slowly became subsumed within larger trade unions such as Unite, as the political landscape of the UK and UK trade unionism has changed and the role of the designer has changed over the years. So this is some of the images from the original Artists Union organising. And we decided not to set up our own union from scratch, considering that we don't have any legal experience, political clout, or the financial ability to do so. So we decided that setting up a specialist branch of an existing union seemed a much more manageable prospect. Also, joining a union that consists of a huge variety of workers, we felt stops the tendency of employment within the arts being continually conceptualized as a privilege, so a kind of luxury that's divorced entirely from labour. We think that a broad intersectional definition of cultural work is needed in order to undo this exploitative logic and galvanise solidarity between all workers, and institutions must be forced to have this same recognition and accept that all workers in the arts deserve protections and advocacy. So we started by evaluating existing data that has been collected specifically about the graphic design industry, of which there is not much. So 1 in 4 creative workers in the UK are freelance, and many creative businesses are small and employ fewer than 5 people. So this example is from Graphic Designers Surveyed, which suggests that only 44% are just getting by. Unfair wages proliferate, overwork-related stress and burnout have become chronic within the sector, and bad practices in employment go unchallenged and even celebrated for too long. For example, many jobs in art and design don't pay sick or holiday pay, let alone overtime. 90% of internships are still offered unpaid. Fee payments are routinely late, and there is often no pension or no security. Our goal is to tackle the individualization of work-related issues, whether they're experienced in the workplace or on your own as a freelancer. So this situation has become the new normal within the cultural sector. And the current crisis has only highlighted how flawed our current system is, how casualized creative work can be, and how much it needs to be re-theorized and rethought. So this is a quote by Hito Steyer. So a few things about the creative industries, as they're sometimes termed. It's a young industry. This is a tweet by Erica Hall that kind of suggests that the sort of modern field of design doesn't exist yet. It's taught like a trade without labour protections. It carries ethical responsibilities of a profession, but it's sometimes practiced without qualification. Our workforce is atomized. So workers will work in different locations and for different employers. Often, if you're working freelance, this might mean having temporary gig work and periods out of work. Our workplace is unequal. So one of the few comprehensive surveys that has been undertaken about the arts field shows a huge level of inequality and inaccessibility for those from working class backgrounds or from minority ethnic groups, for example. Artwork and design work and cultural work is widely misunderstood and undervalued, considering that the creative industries contribute over 100 billion to the UK GDP and employ over 2 million people. It's frustrating to see that wages remain very low in comparison to other areas of the economy, and illegal unpaid internships still proliferate. Our employment is unstable, so often creative work is precarious work. Your employers might not have an understanding of your rights at work, and you will not have learned this during your qualification if you have one. There is a culture of competition that invites young graduates to work for free, to stay late, to work in the evenings and on weekends, to be able to earn a more regular wage or more work. So these are images from our first meetings in October 2019 and the second one in November. At the moment, we have over 100 members, and we are continuing to build our strength and membership as a campaigning branch.
Okay, DCW's membership represents a cross-section of creative industries open to anyone identifying as a designer and or cultural worker. We recognize people often work multiple jobs. We have members who work in theater and performance, fashion, publishing, graphic design, artists, curators, people working in art schools and art admin, etc. We were inspired by the work UVW was already undertaking to fight modern forms of exploitative work. We came together around this form of activism because we see the overlap with fellow precarious, outsourced and gig economy workers, and therefore have more to learn and gain from this new union movement. Many employers in art, design, fashion, museums and theater do not pay sick or holiday pay or pay overtime, for example. Some of the first UVW workers UVW represented were cleaners at the Barbican, and our branch recognizes that all forms of cultural production equal cultural workers. Galleries and museums don't function without cleaners, porters, and security staff. They facilitate cultural production, but are more often not afforded even basic rights due to outsourcing and casualized practices. Organizing our branch within UVW offered the framework to both acknowledge and make visible the realities of being an art worker. UVW branches are organized with the intention to extend UVW's reach to other sectors of precarious work, with workers in those fields autonomously leading and informing, but also, and when needed, taking inspiration, solidarity, experience, counsel, and support from the main UVW. In the current situation, with the art world cancelled and the design industry completely slowed down, the income many relied on was stopped. We know of many cases, both within our union and outside, where people's jobs were cancelled overnight. Many cultural workers will have fallen through the net of government income support. Obviously, huge numbers of cultural workers won't be properly contracted or will be contracted both on a temporary basis, making the furlough scheme inaccessible. From theater and performance workers whose shows have been cancelled and contracts not honored, 0-hour contracts, temp staff at art fairs, and outsourced cleaners at galleries, we are all falling through the net. The cultural sector has committed to prevailing a logic of individualization and competitiveness in determinant of its workforce. The status of creative work is increasingly casualized in the interest of distributing profits unevenly to those at the top. We need a cultural shift, and collaboration, cross-sector approach is at its core. A moment of disruption, as the one we are living at the moment, creates a chance for our industry to be reassembled in the interests of its workers, with solidarity, community, equality at the center of culture. Our branch, DCW, tries to keep the boundary between member and organizers as porous as possible. Any member can be an organizer. We have roles that are often shared and rotate and are shaped in an ad hoc way to respond to concerns or emerging issues. We use Discord to organize with different channels created for working groups or roles, so members and organizers can see how things are developing in real time. We use sociocracy as a way to facilitate meetings and output. We aim for consent rather than consensus, and we try to have as many voices and faces as possible representing. We have supported the recent UCU strikes, and in response to the current crisis, we have been trying to map the experiences of our members, most notably studio spaces, as we felt in this area a lot of organizers might not be focused on. It's an area where a lot of organizers might not be focused on. In turn, we also been supported by our legal sector sister branch, who helped to co-host a member support session answering questions regarding benefits and income support schemes.
So with the outbreak of the coronavirus crisis, we focused a lot of our organizing around a member-led rent freeze campaign for studio spaces. This became a crucial point for us when the first package was announced by the government and missed the self-employed workers. This caused great worry as our rent was due, while all our projects were being cancelled one by one with no alternative means of support. It was rectified a week later with the announcement of the self-employment income support scheme, but the grant does not go far enough. Many fall between the cracks, like workers who are both employed and self-employed, and money won't be available until June. Those of us able to claim the grant will be receiving 80% of their taxable income. This will not cover our usual expenses, as taxable income is what's left once we've deducted our studio rent fees. It's important to recognize that the loss of income will last, which is why we believe a rent freeze is necessary in the face of months' worth of affected earnings and wages. We anticipate very difficult times to come. Work isn't going to pick up overnight. Cultural institutions will be closed for a long time, and the intense usual periods of work when the self-employed might generate a lot of their yearly income, like summer gigs, fairs, fashion weeks, are cancelled. Another thing we realized and made us want to address the studio issue is the government guidelines around work from home were too vague. Government was sending confusing messages on staying at home to save lives, but also keep the economy going. The government states anyone who cannot work from home can still go to work. This ambiguous advice is difficult to interpret for artists, self-employed designers who often can't work from home. There's a particular speech being used around studio access for artists who need to continue accessing their studio for the sake of their mental health. But really, is it just that studio providers don't want to shut to be given more reasons to cancel rent? So we created a survey in the beginning of March. It was vital for us to understand how organizations have responded and gather our members' stories. Vague government guidelines did lead to very inconsistent practices and gave perhaps more room for abuse. This led to the creation of a public database listing all different practices from studio providers. We found out that many providers have announced rent holidays and emergency funds. This is not enough for tenants who are calling for further support. Emergency funds are often very small and only a few are encouraged to apply. Rent holidays only increase the anxiety of a growing debt. We found out also that other providers are going ahead with rent increases, threatening tenants with fees for not paying some bills, charging high interest rates for late payments with absolutely no warning, and a general bad or minimal communication. So we put together a best practice guideline for studio providers, which was sent out to many across the UK. We believe that measures taken by studio providers do not go far enough. So our key demands are the closure of all studio spaces to all but essential work, This closure is urgent for crowded studios, shared spaces where you pass through many communal areas to access your own. For the studios remaining open for essential work, frequent cleaning must be done and sufficient hygiene products must be made available. We are stressing the need for a rent suspension and not a holiday. No rent increases or evictions. Increased transparency in the communication between providers and studio holders. We are also currently trying to gather an overview of the legal landscape of studio tenancies to work out whether providers are breaking their contracts with us when they're asking to keep paying while access to studios isn't allowed.
The coronavirus pandemic has exacerbated precarity and inequality in the creative industries, exposing unsustainable practices that have been strategically ignored by employers for too long. Our best practice letter was signed by Rent Strike, the Art Workers Forum, and other UVW branches, the legal sector workers, and the section of architectural workers. We continue to seek to build bridges with other tenant groups, trade unions, and activist and mutual aid groups, putting pressure on the UK government and opposition, as it becomes clearer and clearer how badly they have mismanaged their response to the coronavirus pandemic in comparison to other countries, and how many lives and livelihoods will be lost as a result. To find out more about joining DCW, please find us on Twitter and Instagram at UVW_DCW. To read more about UVW's coronavirus demands and resources, please visit www.uvwunion.org.uk. At the moment, we are based in London only, but do get in touch with us via email at dcw@uvwunion.org.uk if you would like to start a local branch where you are.